Hello there, welcome to Venture Capital. This week, the Libyan energy industry is once again in turmoil. But this time, it could mean a cold winter for Italians. I'll explain in just a minute on that one. We've also got the most anticipated IPO since Facebook. Yes, I'm talking about Twitter. It happened this week. I'll give you the analysis on that one. And Miss Universe happened in Moscow this week. I got to catch up with some of the gorgeous girls and ask them about their money matters. Talking of beauty, Mr. Sean Thomas, our in-house investor, he's at the business desk to tell us what he's been up to. So we've got a lot to get through. But first, let's start with Libya. So Libya's energy industry is once again in turmoil, and this time it's Italy that could face the consequences of the country's chaotic oil and gas industry. Barber protesters have occupied a gas terminal in western Libya, cutting off the Green Stream gas pipeline that delivers supplies to Sicily. So for more on this topic, I'm now joined by Stuart Elliott from Platts. Hi there, Stuart. Can you tell me, what do you make of the latest troubles in Libya, and what does it mean for the Libyan oil industry and indeed Italy?
And this could be pretty serious, though, for Italy if they do manage to prevent the gas flows, because obviously we're heading towards winter, and Italy, to a large degree, depends on this gas coming across the Mediterranean from Libya. Eni, which is the main Italian oil and gas company, has said that it's pretty convinced they can find alternative gas supplies if the Libyan supply is shut off completely. But obviously, it's going to be expensive for the Italians to have to bring in LNG perhaps from elsewhere, even Russian gas. They've done that once before. So it's not good for Italy, and it's not good for Libya because they're losing in very important revenues, of course.
Of course, as you say, if Italy are going to diversify and find their gas from elsewhere, surely Libya is going to be the biggest loser in all of this.
That's right, and the authorities continue to say, they repeatedly say and stress to their own people that they are losing something like $130 million a day from the disruption to the oil and gas sector. The oil minister, the prime minister, the government authorities, they're making pleas daily almost to the activists to please stop because you're ruining your own country.
Here we are, November, we've still got trouble. Where do you see the end in all of this?
It's very difficult to say. The oil sector is completely paralysed still. Production is down to 250,000 barrels a day, a long way off their capacity, which is about 1.6 million barrels a day. And it's been at standstill now for nearly 6 months. So what's going to happen? Well, I think realistically, there's very little the government can do because they don't have control of the eastern part of the country. And I don't know if people know, but in recent weeks, 2 separate groups in eastern Libya have actually declared independence for the east of Libya, so they have actually formed their own eastern Libyan governments against each other, if you like. But what they're trying to do is to break away from Tripoli, from the rest of Libya, create this independent eastern Libya, and then at that point they want to be able to restart exports as an independent country. Now, the government in Tripoli will not accept that. What they're going to do, though, is anyone's guess. They've ruled out force, they've ruled out more bloodshed. You know, they don't want to return to 2011 where lots of people were killed. So at the moment, the government in Tripoli equally is completely stuck. I don't know what it can do. There's pretty much nothing it can do. So unless they agree to the East becoming a separate country, I think we're going to see the standstill and the disruption continue for some months yet.
Thank you for talking to us. Very much appreciated. So this week, the Twitter trading debut took the New York Stock Exchange by storm. The share price jumped 73%, raising more than $1 billion. But another storm that's been brewing is the NSA spying scandal. And it's interesting that despite the latest revelations over spying intrusions, social media companies such as Facebook and Google continue to rise. Why? Do we no longer care that our personal details are being sold on to make these multi-billion-dollar companies even more money? Well, let's get an expert analysis on this right here from Mike Ingram from BGC Partners. So with that in mind, Mike, with all the spying allegations going on, why is it that these social media companies continue to rise so much?
Well, Katie, I think there's a big picture reason. We're in a world really where growth remains elusive. You saw the ECB cut rates yesterday because growth in the Eurozone and inflation appear to be on the downside. So any companies which the market can identify as having a strong growth profile are going to be very much in demand. What we've seen in Twitter is a combination of factors where it's a product which has high brand recognition. There are about 230 million users of Twitter worldwide, plus this very, very strong growth story. Now, the question, of course, remains is that always already very much in the price of Twitter? And I think the consensus today seems to be that with having closed just below $45 a share, this is pricing in growth in this company, which is probably not going to materialise.
Do you think, Mike, that at some point we're going to get a backlash because clients' information is being shared by these companies? Do you think at some point this social media market is going to crash?
I think it's a possibility, although, one thing that I'm sure we're both very well aware of is that, the public has a very short attention span. And, whereas the whole NSA, spying allegations a few months back made the headlines for a while, I mean, it's all been pushed back into the background. And, of course, we're assuming that the same people who are worried about information sharing with these social media companies are the same people who are driving the share prices on a day-on-day basis. I would say they aren't necessarily the same people. We know, for instance, in Twitter, that 50% of the company went to 10 large institutional investors.
That's Mike Ingram there in London.
My pleasure.
BGC Partners. Now, if the success of the Twitter debut has got you wondering about other successful tech IPOs, let's have a look at how they got on in their day. So if you invested $1,000 in eBay, for instance, that would be worth $27,000 today. We've got Amazon just there. That would be worth $236,000. And if you bought Microsoft stock back in 1985, you would have $378,000. So I bet you're kicking yourself right now. If only we'd have known. Hindsight, brilliant thing, isn't it? Time for corporate news now then. We're going to start with Russia's biggest airport. It's going to release some Eurobonds in London, actually, to do with their business expansion. Domodedovo is currently operating at close to full capacity and without investment cannot increase passenger numbers. It hopes to attract 350 million euros. And Italy's top air carrier hopes Russia's Aeroflot can save it from bankruptcy. Alitalia posted a €300 million loss in the first half of the year, and it owes almost €1 billion. The deal? Well, it's still up in the air. Goldman Sachs and VTB Capital are reportedly buying a 37% stake in Russian Fitness Group, which is the country's biggest gym provider. Fitness services in Russia are in the top 10 in the world with a yearly turnover of $2.1 billion. Right, let's now get over to the business desk and join Mr. Sean Thomas, our in-house investor, and see what he's been up to. Now, Sean, last week it was a bit of a nightmare all round. I don't think you'll argue with that one. You took an absolute battering. Are you recovering?
Well, I'd like to say that everything was a swimming success, Katie. There's always good news and bad news, but in this case, the good news is that I'm alive. The bad news is I took another beating. In fact, if you remember, I went with Gazprom and Energies. They lost 1.5%, which means I am down $140 this week, which brings my total down to $9,336. Not doing too well.
Not doing too well, Sean. OK, we've got to step it up a gear or two. I'm thinking you need some kind of a strategy in place. You can't be just grabbing any old stock, just any old silly business.
Well,
strategy.
I'm all about strategy. That is who I am. In fact, if you recall, last week I went to the audience. I decided to get a little help from our viewers to see what they had to say. Got a lot of really good suggestions. One of them was for the company Izhmash, which is the company that makes AK-47s. They are a weapons company. I'm not about weapons. It's a personal thing, even though it seems like a good suggestion because they're making a new weapon. Also, Rusal, which is a metals company. If you recall, that's what got me into this mess in the first place. That's what I lost most of my money on. So I'm going to do something a little bit unconventional, all right? I am going to stay 75% with Gazprom to kind of see if I can ride that into a wave of goodness, if you will. But a lot of people mentioned Bitcoin because of the show last week, and I think that that's a good idea. Not exactly a Russian stock, not exactly what we've been doing, but it seems like fun. So I'm going to go 25% into Bitcoin and see if I can regain some of my losses. And that's my story, and I'm going to stick to it.
All right, you stick with that, Mr. Sean, and I like it. Gazprom and Bitcoin, that's quite a combination. So that's Mr. Sean Thomas, our in-house investor, a trader with morals, would you believe? Doesn't happen often, but there you are. The Miss Universe contest took place here in Moscow this week for the very first time. And despite appearances, it's not all about big hair, killer heels and plunging necklines. There is some serious cash to be made. The global beauty industry is now worth over $350 billion. I went along to the pageant to talk money. Here at the Miss Universe pageant, you would be forgiven for thinking that the fragile state of the global economy isn't really much of a feature, but looks can be deceiving because that is exactly why the competition was forced to close back in 1935 during the Great Depression, and it managed to get itself back into gear in the 1950s once the US economy was back on track and after the Second World War, of course. Now here, 2013, the winner has gone home with an undisclosed salary, but it's rumored to be worth around $100,000 US. Added to that, you've got a designer wardrobe, you've got beauty products galore, and added to that, a holiday to Morocco, would you believe, and a luxury New York apartment. Now, with that in mind, I spoke to some of the girls and I asked them how they manage their money.
You know, my dad had always told me to pay myself first, so no matter how much bills that you have, always put something away. If it's $10 a week or $20 a week, whatever that you can afford, to put it aside. And if you have things with interest rates, try to pay those off first.
Keep your money in your pocket and just spend it if it's, if it's there.
Let's get going, okay?
So, okay, bye. That's it.
It's very special.
So there you have it, beauty and brains. Now, I heard a rather startling fact today that Miss Britain has never won this competition. So, okay, I'm a little bit short, but I'm going to go and see if it's not too late to enter voice out. World peace. Yeah, I didn't get very far, but you know what? A girl can dream, can't she? Nothing wrong with that. Now, moving on to the ugly side of beauty. A Chinese man has reportedly divorced and sued his ex-wife for giving birth to what he thought to be an extremely ugly baby girl. Now, it turns out that Jian Fang's wife had splurged out $100,000 worth of cosmetic surgery before they met, which is why the baby didn't look quite like her mummy. Mr. Fang won the court case, would you believe, and $120,000 on the grounds that she should have told him about all the surgeries so he could have made an informed decision on whether to marry her and procreate. Now, I'm thinking Mr. Fang here hasn't heard that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Now, I may never be Miss Universe, but I will always be Miss Venture Capital. See you next week. Thanks for watching.